of this slide. And this picture is here because water is the thing that most often is missing from the home preparedness. So that is very important, but yet a bit challenging to take care. We will discuss that also during today. So 72 hours is the concept, and a few words about me. So I am from Tampere. I have a Master of Science degree in psychology. I work as a senior consultant currently at MPS Career, and I have a history of being a senior HR manager in different Finnish and international companies. I am active in voluntary defense work, so I'm the chair of the board for Tampereen Seudun Reserviläisnaiset Association, and also I am a committee trainer for MPK. So that is very briefly about me. So 72 hours is referring to the ability of households to be ready to survive on their own in case of disruption. So this is the recommendation by Finnish public authorities and also some non-governmental organizations. And the situations when households need this preparedness can take place in various situations. There can be some rough weather conditions or some other unexpected crisis in the community that leads to a situation that the normal services and normal functionalities are not in place. And there is an increased pressure for households to be able to cope on their own. So this is where the 72 hours comes from. The ability of households to cope with this kind of disruption situations is very important for the community total resilience. And not only are we supposed to take care of ourselves and our families, but I would also say that many of us who are now here today are also expected to be able to help others in a crisis or disruption situations. For example, there might be some elderly persons in your neighborhood that would need your help in carrying water, for example, or in some other actions to make it possible for them to manage their life in their own homes. Here you can see the content of this presentation with a small change that we have now skipped the cybersecurity due to the time limit that we have today for this session. But otherwise, we are going through these topics that are visible here. Okay, so first of all, what is preparedness? That is to secure the living conditions of the population and thus also the continuity of all normal actions in the kind of in our environment, in our workplaces and other places, even though there might be some disruptions in the surrounding. And of course, the authorities and the society is helping us, but the first start with the most vulnerable persons who need most help. So that is why I already in the beginning said that we are most probably the persons who are expected to help others in this kind of situations. And the home preparedness and continuity management is a very important part of the society's total resilience. This is emphasized a lot by the authorities, and thus this topic is also educated and informed to Finnish people or people located in Finland. And what is then the role of the households? That is something that we are now going through today, but kind of to summarize that, it means that you have your home fire safety in order. You know first aid skills, so you have the basic skills to act in a situation if there is a fire in your home, and you also know how to help people if they have some sudden sickness or accident or some other injury. And then also to prepare your home with certain supplies that should be available. I will stop for a while to this slide because it's quite a lot of text here, and perhaps you want to take a closer look to this list and what it contains. This all will be explained in the course of this presentation, and I think that it is also quite self-evident that these are needed in a normal household. This starts with the emergency food supply and a few liters of bottled water. This is a very important part of this household preparedness. So to have the food for you, your family, and if you have pets, also for them and for 72 hours. And same applies to the water. Water means here what you need to drink and also for the personal hygiene. I will pick certain topics from the list. I will not read it totally through here, but also the next one is very important. So you should have a clean bucket or a canister. If you have a bucket, it should be with a lid, because if there is this kind of emergency water supply arranged, you need to go there with your own transportation thing so that you can take the water to your home. And for that purpose, you need some clean buckets or canisters to carry the water, not the same ones that you use for cleaning your house. Also, a battery-powered radio, and batteries for that is very important. And then also I will take here the face masks and hand sanitizers. I believe that a couple of years ago we all did have this at home, not necessarily today, but they continue to be quite important. And of course, then a smoke alarm is very important as well. Hopefully you were able to take a thorough look to this slide, and now I start to go through the content and starting with a power outage. And first of all, a task or a question for you to consider. So how would your everyday life change if you would be out of electricity and power for 3 days? Perhaps some of you already do have an experience of this kind of situation, depending on bit where you live and what is what kind of heating system you have at your house. But for example, during the winter time, when there is a lot of snow coming and so on, this might be a real situation for many households. I believe that we all do think that having a power outage for 3 days would have quite a major impact to our everyday life. You can follow the situation in Finland, meaning the power outages, from this sähkökatkokartta.fi website. It shows always the current situation and where there are power outages in Finland. That is, for example, if you notice that you don't have any electricity at your home and you would like to check whether it is a larger problem or is it possibly concerning only your house or your own apartment. This is a good way to check the situation. All the time there are power outages in Finland somewhere. So last time I checked it was more than 1,000 households were out of electricity at that moment. In a case of power outage, what happens normally right away? So of course lights go out and any electrical appliances, they stop working. In some homes, water supply also stops. And naturally then lifts and street lights and so on, they go out. Also note that the petrol pumps and charging points, they stop working right away. And you won't be able to take money out of banks or ATMs. And also most probably you won't be able to pay with your credit cards, even though there would be a shop open. And of course, also the traffic is impacted by power outage. I will share a tip that I have been now applying to my personal life. So I never let my car go totally out of fuel. So I always keep the tank half full in case there is then a situation that I'm not able to fill it due to this kind of power outage. Because it might be that exactly in that same situation, you need your car, you need to drive somewhere, and then it's a bit challenging if you are not able to do that because of the you have run out of fuel. And then quite soon, if not immediately, most grocery stores and other small shops will close. Not necessarily all, but majority of them. So we really can't count on going to them and, for example, buying food at that moment. So that is why the emergency food supply should be at home, kind of ready. After 2 hours, the first telecommunications base stations go dark, and then it's not you are not able to make any phone calls anymore or access the internet. And latest at this point, water supply stops in most homes. And then after 6 hours, we already notice quite wide impacts. So most probably the communication connections are down and we are not able to keep contact during the normal ways and channels that we usually use. And also then the traffic is widely impacted. So you can see that the impacts can be quite wide and they really affect our everyday life in many ways. So in case of power outage, especially during the winter time, the question very quickly comes that how we can stay warm in that kind of situations. Of course, the solution is a very simple that way that we should have, and we all do have warm clothes and blankets that we can use in that situation. But it's also good to consider that what are the ways to prevent the heat from escaping the apartment where you are located at the moment. So not opening the windows, not opening the doors, and trying to seal the gaps with some kind of fabrics or tape or whatever. That if you feel that there is cold air coming in. And if you have to spend the night in a cold home and it's really getting closer to the 0 degrees, then it's good to consider ways to kind of be in the most or the warmest part in your apartment. So if you have a family, try to stay close to each other because that of course then brings warm. And you can try to build some kind of tent. So put some duvet or other large fabric on top of the table and then sleep under the table because already that is kind of keeping the place a bit warmer. Or if you have a tent, you can also have that inside. Cooking during the power outage is really important question, especially if you are living in a row house or in a block house where you don't have any possibilities to cook your food or without the electricity. If you have a fireplace, that is of course a good thing. Or if you have some kind of camping stove, that is also a way to have some warm food. But I would like to note here that if you are planning to use a camping stove like Trangia or some other similar method, then observe the fire security. Ideally, it should be used only outdoors because it can cause some risks if you are using that indoors. Also think, do you have some neighbor or some other person around you with whom you could cooperate? So if there is one person is having a way to cook, can that be somehow shared or cooperated so that you can utilize those? It's also good to have some disposable tableware at home, because if you are not able to wash the dishes, it might be very convenient that you can just kind of use the disposable stuff, and then you don't have to worry about the dishes piling there to the kitchen. And using water during the power outage. This is quite important topic to remember. So if you are out of electricity and you live in a block house or row house, you shouldn't be letting the water to go to the drain. So you can take the water from the tap, but you should put some kind of bucket or other bowl or something like that to the sink, so that the water doesn't go to the drain. And that is because the wastewater management system operates, it is power operated. So there is a risk of some unpleasant consequences or floods if people are letting water to go to the waste management drains and it is not operating in a desired way. So you can use the water, but you shouldn't be letting it to the sink. The quality of water is not impacted by the power outage, so it is safe to drink and use also otherwise. But please note that use always the cold water, because especially then when the electricity comes back, the water coming from the tap can be almost boiling, so it is not regulated normally in that kind of situation. And in a case of power outage, you shouldn't be using the toilet, so you shouldn't be flushing it. And that is because of the reason that I mentioned some time ago, that the waste management system is not most probably working properly. So what is then the way to take care of this or use the toilet, is that you put a plastic paper there and some kind of shredded paper or other soft stuff on the bottom of the plastic bag. And after then using that, seal it very carefully and put it in 2 other plastic bags and then sort it out as a mixed waste. So that is the way to take care of the hygiene aspect. Okay. And then not so often the situation in Finland, but might be the case during the summer, that we also need to think that how we can stay cool in the heat. So if we have some kind of air conditioning system in our apartment and it is not working, of course we need to take care of the temperature inside the house so that it is not increasing too much. So avoid opening the windows and use all the curtains and other shades that you have to prevent the light and the warmth to enter the apartment. And only open the windows and ventilate the apartment when it is as cold as possible, so during the night time. And of course, always take care that you drink enough. Okay, so this was the topic of the power outage, and as you noticed, this was quite vast, because this is really important thing in our everyday life, and we need to consider many practical topics if we are not having the electricity in our apartment. Same applies, of course, to water outage. So if we are not getting the water, then that we normally don't even think about and comes to our kind of apartment normally, then that is really challenging situation. So water outages, they can be resulted as a power delivery problems or contamination of the water supply. And in this kind of prolonged situations, water distribution is arranged if it's going to last more than 24 hours. But of course, we normally need water already earlier than only after 24 hours. And that is the why that we all should have at least a couple of liters of bottled water in home. And I highly recommend to use the bottled water that we can buy from the grocery store. So not the water that we take from the tap to a bottle that we have at home, because even though the bottle that we use would be clean, it still contains some microorganisms, and we can't be sure that how long the water is drinkable. So bottled water is safe, and it is also always stated that what is the last day of use for that. It's quite a high amount of water that we actually need on a daily basis. So it should be received 2 liters of drinking water per day, plus the one that we need for the personal hygiene. So the rough estimate is that from 1 to 2 buckets of water per person per day. Normally, we use even up to 120 liters every day. And if this kind of emergency water supply is arranged, we get something like 5 liters per person per day. So it's much less than we normally use. And as said already earlier, please make sure that you have some clean lidded buckets or other containers that you can use to collect the water. And then if the water is contaminated, so it kind of comes normally, but you can't use it, then make really sure that you are not using it by accident, because it is so automated that we take the water and drink it. So somehow seal or put some warning note to the tap. And follow the instructions that are given about the usage of the water. If it's said that water can be used as boiled, then the case is that you should be boiling the water at least 5 minutes, which means that you should boil it in a kettle. If you put it to some kind of coffee machine or other appliance, they are not boiling it long enough so that the microorganisms would die. So that is why the 5 minutes is required. If it's said that you can't use the water at all, then you can use it only to flush the toilet, but you can't drink it even as boiled. So there is a difference. And if you don't get water to your apartment or house, you can flush the toilet only once. So it can be flushed, but only once, because most probably it is not kind of filling then anymore after that. So again, here the same advice that the garbage bag or some plastic bag can be placed inside the toilet and then used. And after that, sorted as a mixed waste and put to 2 different or 2 separate plastic bags before sorting it as a waste. This is also quite important in big block houses where there are tens or hundreds of people living. So you can imagine that the situation becomes quite difficult if these instructions are not followed. Okay, and then next we will move on to home emergency food supply. And there are various situations when you might need the home emergency food supply. So it can be, for example, this prolonged power outage situation. It can be also a situation that you can't go to the shop for one reason or another. It can be also so that there is some kind of disruption in the food supply chain, so that there is something that impacts to the availability of the stuff in the stores. Or if the payment system is down, so you are not able to get anything from the store. What is then the home emergency food supply kind of consisting of? So kind of the best possible items are the ones that can be stored in a room temperature. They have a long shelf life and they can be prepared quickly, and they don't need much water or electricity for cooking, so you can eat them as such. And I once heard an advice that buy what you eat and eat what you buy. So really the emergency food supply is not something separate that you have there in some corner of your apartment, but it is exactly the same stuff that you eat and consume in your normal life. And also in a case of disruption, it is quite important that you have that kind of food that you like to eat. That is not most probably the situation when you want to try something different or rare. So save that for some other circumstances. And then in this kind of disruption situations, rely on the ones that you know that you like and your family also likes. And if you have pets and other animals there, of course, then also food for them. Also consider the kind of the cooking possibility. So if you have some kind of fireplace, of course it's then easier to cook the food, but if you need to rely on the camping stove or you don't have anything like that available, then it is very highly recommended to kind of check that you have this kind of stuff there that you can eat without cooking. And then if there is, for example, a power outage situation and your fridge and freezer starts to warm, then consider also the consuming order of the food that you have. And first use those that are going to be spoiled the quickest. Avoid opening the fridge or freezer door because it actually stays for a quite long time cold if you don't open it. So consider carefully if you need when you need to open it. And if then there is a situation that it is inevitable that your freezed stuff is then closer to zero, if you have a possibility to cook them, you can then freeze them again if the electricity is back. So these are the ways to avoid waste and of course avoid the loss of money, so that those things that you have in your freezer you could utilize one way or another. It is good to know that what you have there in the freezer and also what you have there in the fridge, so that you can kind of in your mind plan the order in which you use them. Here you can see some examples that are good to have there in the home emergency food supply. Well, these are quite normal stuff like fruit, vegetables, bread, cereals, any dried fruits, and other that give you also a kind of a lot of energy. These are very, very recommended. If you use milk, then consider that what is the one that is best preserved. And also something good to eat like candy or biscuits or chocolate. they don't usually have the problem of getting old there or running out of the date. Okay, so now we have discussed here the power outage, water outage, and then also the emergency food supply. And next we are moving on to the sheltering indoors. And sheltering indoors might be needed or is needed when there is a general warning sign given. So there is some kind of emergency situations and the authorities warn people with these signs. And if you hear that sign, meaning the 1 minute racing signal, then the first thing and the most important thing is to do, what you need to do is that you go to any nearest indoor space and follow the instructions. So if you are there shopping or whatever, you go to the nearest indoor space. So in that situation, you don't start to travel back to home. And in many cases, this is enough. So this is the thing that you need to do. And then you are informed when you can leave that indoor space and continue your journey or go to home. You can hear the testing of these public warning systems on a weekly basis. On a monthly basis. And if you are interested, of course, you can check that sign from the internet. It is recorded there if you like to check that, how it sounds. It is also highly recommended that if you don't yet have, you could download the 112 application to your phone. That is a free application and it is useful in many ways. You can, for example, make an emergency call via that and it shows your exact location to the authorities. So there are coordinates that you can share, or if you make the call via that application, authorities can see where you are located. That is quite useful if you are in a not so familiar place or you can't give the exact location in the call. Also, this 112 application delivers to you the warning notifications on Finland level and also on the kind of local level based on your location. It is important to allow this application to use your location. So that is the way that you get the latest notifications wherever you are located. So if you don't have that yet, please download it to your phone as soon as possible. What are then the situations that sheltering indoors might be needed? So, for example, in a situation when there is a bigger fire in the surrounding area and there is a risk of some kind of smoke or other toxic items to be spreaded to the environment. In that case, authorities might instruct people to stay inside. And of course, if there is some kind of accident and risk of leakage, or depending on where you live, also risk of radiation. And then when you hear the public warning signal, then move indoors and stay inside and close doors, windows and vents and seal the caps, for example, with a tape or with a fresh film or something like that, that prevents the smoke and smoke entering the apartment. And please note that not always the toxic items are visible or something that you can smell. So better to be kind of on a safe side here and make proactive actions, so preventing these to enter the building. And then turn on the radio if possible and wait for the instructions. It's not recommended to use the phone so that you can keep the lines clear and not so busy at the moment when there is many people perhaps trying to make phone calls. You shouldn't be leaving the area, but stay where you are and wait for the instructions or the permission to then leave the area. And iodine tablets or pills only when instructed to do so by authorities, and mainly these are for persons who are younger than 40 years, or then pregnant mothers or breastfeeding mothers. But only when instructed to do so, these tablets should be taken. And if that is then a risk of radiation, please also note that it is very recommended to store drinks and food in airtight containers, also including the food and water that you give to your pet. It's important that you know how to shut down the ventilation in your own home. If you are living in a block house, it is normally in the close to the main door or somewhere in the hallway, so that anyone can access it and switch it off when it is required. In row houses, it is most probably then kind of apartment specific system, so you need to learn to know how to do that in your own home. It is the responsibility of the building's residents really to shut down the ventilation, so that is not something that the firefighters or other authorities come and do. So please make sure that you know how to do that, and also pay attention to the location of the switch if you are living in the block house. And it is important to do before any substance or smoke enter the building, because sheltering indoors means that you are sheltering there and it is some dangerous stuff there outside. And if the dangerous items then somehow enter the building, then you don't have any safe place to go. So better to be kind of better to be proactive than wait too long. Here you can see on the lower right-hand side, you can see a picture how this switch looks like, so you can then check it in your own building. So sheltering indoors in most cases means that you shelter to the closest building. In some situations, it means that you are sheltering to civil defense shelters, but that is extremely rare case. Finland has civil defense shelters, for example, in block houses and row houses, and mainly in the capital area also these kind of bedrock shelters that are meant for people who are kind of living close to them. If these civil defense shelters are to be taken into a use, that is first of all instructed by the authorities. So they give the orders to start to take them into use. And they should be taken into use within 72 hours. Normally they are used for some other purposes, like for some hobby places, or then you can find there are some storing areas or stuff like that. So first of all, these shelters should be emptied and then prepared for the use. So 72 hours is reserved for that. And every house should have a responsible person who then takes the lead if this kind of order is ever given. If you need to go to this kind of civil defense shelter, please note that you take your own food, medicine, clothes, a sleeping bag, basically everything with you, and also the water. there is nothing available, and then it's important that you take the things that you need for 2 to 3 days. When the civil defense shelters are in use, most probably it means that they are quite tightly packed. It is less than 1 square meter space for each person, which means that not all people can, for example, sleep at the same time. So it needs to be divided. So part of the persons there, they can rest, and then part of the persons take care of the systems and functioning of the shelter. So it is good and important to know where your civil defense shelter is located and kind of mentally understand that what it means that it is taken into a use and what one needs to have with him or herself when going to the shelter. Communication in a disruption situation. As discussed in the beginning of this presentation, the communication systems may go down quite soon in a case of power outage. And also, it is important to pay attention that we get reliable information and we understand that what is reliable information during a disruption. So what is good to have at home is this battery powered radio, and of course batteries for that, so that it is really ready to use if you need it. If you have this kind of battery powered radio, it is good to test at least once a year so that it is really working. Of course, your mobile phone with a charge, and also some kind of power bank ready to use so that you can use that in case of power outage. During a disruption situation or any kind of crisis situation, rely on the information that you know that is kind of reliable and valid. Of course, all the information sharing from the authorities, from the Finnish broadcasting company, Yle, and similar channels are reliable. And also this 112 mobile application in your phone provides you one good and practical channel for following the recommendations and guidelines given by the authorities. So now we are approaching to the last part of this presentation, and that is psychological resilience. So this is added to this concept, and it is the basis for the actions that we have in disruption situations. Psychological resilience means that we are able to function even in a situation that is not normal or somehow challenging or difficult situation. We might have concerns, worries. We might think about our kind of family members or our relatives who are living in other place than ourselves, that how they are doing and are they able to manage. The purpose of this presentation, this household preparedness, and also other preventive kind of measures, is to ensure that you and we are able to act in a situation of crisis. So have this material preparation for emergency food supply, power banks and so on at home is important, but it is also important to be mentally prepared for any exceptional situation. This is starting from the self-knowledge, that one knows that how am I reacting in a situation that is not normal. And what is the best way for me to keep up my own abilities to function? What helps me in a situation when I'm not kind of totally on my comfort zone and there might be some threatening elements? Maintaining the sense of community before the crisis is also quite essential, because anything new during crisis or disruption is difficult to start. So the community here refers to the people who are living close to you, your friends, your family members. Because we need most probably help from others, and we also should be able to provide help to others so that we can really survive. And having a clear routines in everyday life before the crisis makes it then easier to continue them in the possible event of disruption. Taking care of one's basic needs like sleep, food, and regular exercise are good for the physical and mental health. So you are really kind of fit for any situation. So preparedness is built before anything happens. That is kind of the core message of whole this presentation, and this applies also to the psychological resilience. Ultimately, it is a muscle that you can develop. We are not born with resilience. It is something that we can develop and is also developed throughout the course of our lives. If then something happens, a smaller or bigger crisis that somehow changes our everyday life, take care of the people that rely on you, especially the children, because they are most probably, it is difficult for them to understand what is going on, and things might be very different than in normal life. It's good to keep up the routines that kind of builds the structure to the everyday life. And resist rumors, don't spread them, and only rely on information that you can really trust. Also be aware of your own emotions and reactions, and seek help in time and support when you feel that you need support. So take care of your own resources also in that way, that you react early, so that you can maintain your own ability to function. We often might have the feeling that we don't have much to offer in a case of a crisis, that we would like to do more than we are actually able to do. But I would like to emphasize here that being available, having a good talk with people is already a lot. So we don't need to make any magic. We just need to be humans to humans, because we are then in the same situation, and we get strength when we can kind of go through all that together. And then after the crisis or disruption situation, make sure that you have the possibility to process it. So discuss, go through what happened, why it happened, why I reacted the way I reacted. It is always good to seek professional help, and that is available in Finland, so that you can recover from whatever happened. That builds then the basis for any possible future situations where you again then need some extra strength. And we learn always. So even though the crisis situation is difficult and stressful, we often learn from it. And we can also that way build and strengthen our own preparedness. And this is also kind of best done in a conversation or in a dialogue with others, so that you really can see that, okay, this happened, what I learned, what I will do differently in the future, what I will do same way in the future. Also to see that you made most probably exactly the correct things in the crisis situation. We are not able to do any discussion or smaller group discussion now in this session, but I would encourage you to consider this topic, that who would need your help in the case of a disruption. So who are the persons who rely on you? Most probably you come up with certain self-evident names like family members and so on, but also consider this wider. Are there people close to you who might a bit unexpectedly need or wish something from you? And also kind of include them to the circle of people that you could support. And also consider then the persons whom you rely on, who will support you in a difficult situation. So today we have discussed these topics, except the cybersecurity. This presentation won't be shared in this format, but you can find some useful material from the spec pages. So basically the content is described there. So I recommend to familiarize yourself with the spec pages. We could put the link to the chat as well so that it is easier to find.